Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today I have a quirky little guest here because this is indeed a ThinkPad. But if you didn't think that looking at it, I don't blame you. You see, this is part of the ThinkPad Z series, which was a series of laptops that was hanging around mainly the year 2006 to 2007, at least the Z61 was, and that's what we have represented here. The Z61 was the last of the Z series, and its big claim to fame was supposed to be a multimedia ThinkPad, and it was very closely related in generation speak to the R60 and the T60. It was the first ThinkPad with a wide screen that was 16 by 10, and I find that rather humorous at this time, primarily because those are making quite the comeback. And they came in two finishes. The first was this titanium lid finish, which I do not recommend for two reasons. The first is that if it loses its coating, which it does very, very quickly, then it discolors and becomes this fingerprint and kind of imperfection magnet. So they don't look very nice over time. The second reason is that you can, unfortunately, because it is titanium and not polymer plastic or anything else, you can get what I like to call the eBay GSP mod, or the Global Shipping Program modification. And that's where if it's dropped, you have permanent damage done to the laptop, and that's going to carry through to the screen. And the screens are very, very fragile on these. I learned that the hard way. They did come in the standard rubberized black finish lids. Although you don't see them as often on the Z series, they are out there, and to me, those are the ones that I would want. But at the same time, the titanium lid is, I think, becoming more and more of a collector's item. This particular Z61 is the Z61T. There were several variants. This is simply one of them. There was an E model, there was an M model, and there was a P model on top of the T model. Now, the T variant had its own series of CPU options, and there was a plethora of them. To break it down into four major categories, you had the Intel Core 2 Duo option, which was only available on revision 3 of this motherboard. And that was everything from the T5500 all the way up to the T7600. The Intel Core Duo, which was the 2500 or 2400, and this is actually the 2400 variant. You had the Intel Core Solo, which was the T1300 or 1400, and then these were also available in Intel Celeron configurations of 410, 420, and 430. Most of them all came with an Intel Graphic Media Accelerator 950 or around their mark. This one is a 945. And RAM on these was PC2 5300 DDR2. And from what I can read online, the maximum that you could install was 4 gigabytes. That'd be 2 sticks of 2, but it would only register 3 out of those, which is really quirky. The displays on these came in 2 flavors, both in 14.1 inches. You either had the 1280 by 800 display, which was more common, or, and this is what makes it really, really tragic that it's broken, is the 1440 by 900 panel, which is what this is. Or should I say what it was? Unfortunately, these displays are not exactly what you would call super common, and I actually priced it out, and it would have cost me just as much as I purchased the laptop for to replace this display. And that was after doing a lot of searching. So without further ado, let's just do a quick tour of some of the ports and features. And the two things that I actually want to start with are up here at the top of the screen. This actually has a web camera installed, which was an option. So much so that they actually had to have a cutout in the palm rest. So when you fold it down, the camera actually has a place to go. So do keep that in mind if you plan, for whatever reason, retrofitting this camera. You need to make sure that the palm rest is swapped out, or bad things are going to happen. A few other things to note is that this is cursed with the amber IBM ThinkLight. It does not have the white LED. This model is equipped with a fingerprint reader in the palm rest, a very modestly sized trackpad, as well as the classic track point. It has a beautiful keyboard, and this is one of the models that actually has pictograms facing upward, so you can actually tell where your ports are without looking at the side of the machine. It's a cute little feature. I don't know how practical it ends up being, but it's a nice touch. So by looking at the deck, I know where all of these ports are. Speaking of those ports, let's go ahead and do a quick tour of those right now. On the left-hand side of the machine, we have Ethernet, 56K modem, and VGA. Along the backhand side, we have the power plug, standard barrel, and then we have S-Video. And then on the right-hand side, we have the Kensington lock slot, one USB port, the Ultra Base Slim, Firewire, two USB ports, and then a PCM CIA card slot. Along the front, we do have a series of ports that are worth mentioning as well. We have the headphone and microphone jacks. We have a Wi-Fi kill switch. We have a infrared blaster, and then we have a SD card slot. Other things to note is that it does have a docking connector on the bottom as well. And battery-wise, this is a 66 watt-hour battery, and it would appear to be a 9-cell, but the 9-cell that I have on record for this machine is an 84 watt-hour battery with a 6-cell being 56 watt-hours. There is a bit of confusion because if you go onto the website for these machines, the battery configurations are a bit muddled. And I suspect that might be because this is a T model and the other batteries might fit those variants. So I'm not 100% sure on batteries and configurations for this machine quite yet. If you happen to know, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. Let's go ahead and just do a quick disassembly of the major components of this machine. We'll do a little bit of startup and then we'll finish our discussion. Once we have this flipped over, we should remove the battery, like so, easily done. And then the first thing we'll do is we'll spin out the screw that holds the hard drive in. So that screw is not captive, and then the plate just simply lifts away. Reach the screwdriver in there, flip out the tab, and we can remove the hard drive. And this does still use the more modern SATA style connector and not the IDE, which is a relief. It is worth noting that as I pull this out, this does have the smelly rails, so this plastic, if you ever have a bad smelling ThinkPad, these are actually the culprit. You can tell as soon as I open that up. The next thing to do is to remove the optical drive, and because it is Ultra Bay, we can pull this tab off to the side, pull up, and then remove that. And then once we're finished, we'll just push that back into place. Then the next thing that we can go ahead and remove is the keyboard. And the keyboard has 5. That's the most screws I've ever seen for one of those. So let's go ahead and spin those out. And perhaps not surprisingly, they don't appear to be captive screws because they go through the entire machine. All right, with all of those screws removed, we'll flip the machine over, activate the catch. Slowly lean it up. Well, the palm rest came out first, and that is good because that is where the RAM is hiding. That just unplugs with a cable there. We can move that off to the side. Huh, what a curious thing to do. So we have the CMOS battery and the RAM slots underneath here. And we can see that beautiful magnesium roll cage. And our keyboard at this point lifts up and out. So that is a bit different. That ribbon cable is pretty short, so we're just going to reach in there and pop that out. So what we have here is the modem card, and then down here we have the larger Wi-Fi card. This slot is left here open for 3G connectivity, I believe, or some other modem. And then under here, we actually do have a socketed CPU, so we could change this out to a newer one if we so chose. And it's actually really neat because, again, most of, if not all, the serviceable components are facing upward. So while it is an extra step to remove the palm rest before we remove the keyboard, in some ways I kind of like that because it's 5 screws and that's everything, which is kind of cool. I like that. I think this is a really neat way not to necessarily design a thin computer, but in terms of just serviceability, they did pretty well with this. I'm actually quite impressed. So let's go ahead and reassemble this thing and turn it on. All right, now that we have everything back together, let's go ahead and turn this thing on. I'll try and get a good angle here for you. One thing that I was pretty impressed with actually is the boot time on this thing. It's not terrible considering it's running Windows XP currently. It does okay. And now you can begin to see my eBay GSP mod and its repercussions that it had on the case. But by and large, for its age, it's got had a wonderful, wonderful screen. It still connects to 5 gigahertz networks. If I was looking for a retro machine, this would definitely be a good pick in my books. It's only running a 32-bit CPU in this model, and even though it can connect to those networks, I would be hesitant to do so running Windows XP on the internet because you never know what you might pick up. That being said, though, it does a pretty snappy little job at everything and is promising me about 2.5 hours of runtime, which isn't the worst. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at the Z61T with me. It is a very unique ThinkPad in so many ways, in the design decisions that it had, the features that it boasted, and a few other things, including this 16:10 screen ratio, which is starting to make a comeback. If you do have any questions, I would encourage you to leave them in the comment section down below, and as always, I'll encourage you to do the big 4. Please like the video, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, so the next time I have some kind of old ThinkPad like this, you'll be the first to know about it. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.